To get your thoughts on the President Biden's State of the Union address, where he said that America needs to make more cars and semiconductors in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. What do you think that means for Ontario's aspirations of becoming an electric vehicle hub?
Well, with the greatest of respect to President Biden, I think the most important thing that we need to do here in Ontario, something that we have not done under Doug Ford's Conservative government over the past 4 years, is make sure that we have a real plan to create the kind of vibrant and strong and, again, resilient electric vehicle supply chain, let's say, market here in this province. So, for example, and I say this as someone who, in his own personal life, very proudly drives a pure battery electric vehicle, and I have for the past 5 years. It's one thing to talk a good game. This is the Conservative Party's problem with all of these issues. They talk a good game, but they never deliver it or back it up with meaningful action. So it's one thing at the end of the term or near the end of Doug Ford's first term, and hopefully his last term, that he talks a good game about electric vehicles. But we all remember, here in this province, one of the very first things that he did was to cancel the electric vehicle incentive program. That sends a signal around the world, not just here in Ontario, not just across Canada, but around the world, that Doug Ford, from his first days in office, did not support or believe in the electric vehicle market, the potential that electric vehicles have to make life better and more affordable and greener for Ontario families. And so all of the stuff that Doug Ford's talked about in the past few months pales in comparison to him making it crystal clear from the very first few weeks of being premier that he doesn't believe in electric vehicles. A Liberal government, not only would we restore the electric vehicle incentive program, we would make sure that we were consistently campaigning, consistently advocating the way that we did when the North American Free Trade Agreement was being renegotiated. I had the honor as Economic Development Minister to be in Montreal, to be in Mexico City, to be in New York and Washington for some of those discussions that were taking place. That's the way you do it. You be proactive about it, but you also make sure that you're dealing with the critical minerals that we have access to in this province, that you're creating a real domestic market for the vehicles. You're sending a clear signal to the world that you are prepared to do what's required in order to make that happen. And Doug Ford doesn't get it. All of the slogans, all of the talk, all of the billboards at the border saying that he's allegedly open for business when we know he's not. That doesn't work. So this is the work that the next Premier of Ontario has to focus on, because we know how critically important the auto sector is here in the province of Ontario. And we need to be, here in Ontario, such an important part of where that sector, where that industry is set to go.
You say that the government needs to be willing to do what's necessary to get that, make that happen. But what does need to be done if we are looking at an American administration that is increasingly less interested in having an integrated auto industry with Canada?
Well, when was the last time, and none of us knows this, when was the last time Doug Ford was actually talking to the governors south of the border? I've forgotten, forgive me for forgetting the exact number of states that we have south of the border for whom Ontario is the number one or number two trading partner. These are the lessons that we learned when the North American Free Trade Agreement was being renegotiated. You actually have to pick up the phone when you're able to do so, be on the road, be down there. You have to use all of the tools that you have available to you. The last time that I checked, I don't even think Doug Ford, and this could have changed since I last heard, I don't think he's even filled the vacancy that he has for Canada's or Ontario's representative in Washington. I mean, what kind of signal does that send? How many months did that position stay vacant? So this is what I mean when I say Doug Ford doesn't take this seriously. He kind of latches on to the latest slogan, the latest interesting idea, but there is no plan. There is no coherent plan to make sure that Ontario can tap into what is fast becoming, if it hasn't already become, such an incredibly important global supply chain, to make sure that we have our part, we have our share, given our track record, given the fact that we have critical minerals here in Ontario that are essential for electric vehicles, given the fact that we have a tech sector in Ontario that's second to none around the world. We had an early mover advantage in this province, and Doug Ford squandered it. And now he's trying to make up for it after the fact. So this is a number one priority, or one of the top priorities that I have moving forward, because it is so critical for Ontario's economy.
Okay, just a reminder to reporters on the line, if you could just please raise your hand using the Zoom function or write to the chat and I will add you to the queue. Okay, our next question is from Pooja Luthra from Y Media.
Hi, good morning. I'm
Morning.
Pooja Luthra from My Media, Channel Y. I would like to know how Ontario Liberals will deal with rising inflation.
Well, from a provincial government's perspective, the most important thing that we can do is find important ways, meaningful ways to make life more affordable for Ontario families. So everybody knows, as you pointed out with your question, that the price of everything is going upwards right now, whether it's the cost of groceries, it's the cost of gas at the pumps, it's the cost of heating our homes while the weather is still a little bit chilly, a little bit cold. We need a provincial government, and you will have this in Ontario under an Ontario Liberal government that moves forward with big plans, ambitious plans to make life more affordable for the people of Ontario. Here's one example. It's been over 240 days since the first province in Canada got a deal done with the federal government on $10 a day licensed childcare. Here we are in this province, because of the Conservative government of Doug Ford, the only province left in Canada that doesn't have a deal in place. If we had $10 a day licensed childcare in Ontario right now, families here in Scarborough, for example, would be saving up to $10,000 per child per year. That's $200 to $300 each and every week that they would be saving. And yet Doug Ford stubbornly refuses to get that kind of deal done with the federal government. This, again, is one of my priorities. It is an Ontario Liberal priority. By the end of 2024, if elected, we will deliver that kind of savings for families here in Scarborough and across this province. Within 100 days of taking office, we'll deliver $10 a day before and after school care, which will save a family here in Scarborough over $2,000 each and every single year per child. So this is just one of the examples, and we'll have more to talk about in the run-up to and during the election campaign. But I have to say, this is something that I hear about regularly from these candidates that I'm standing alongside, this exceptional Scarborough team. I hear it from families in my home community. When I'm at the grocery store every Saturday morning in Woodbridge, where I live, right here in the GTA, people talk to me about the pain that they're feeling because under the Conservative government of Doug Ford, things are moving in the wrong direction. Despite how hard they're working, Ontario families under the Conservatives are going further and further backwards, and we will change that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Colin DeMello from CTV. Go ahead, Colin.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Del Duca. Just
Colin.
wanted to ask about the Financial Accountability Officer. I'm sorry if it may have already been asked. I was watching two news conferences at the same time. So the FAO says $5.5 billion was underspent as of the third quarter. Yeah. But at the same time, we're hearing a lot of announcements being made as well by the Ford government that seem to have some real fiscal impacts here. What do you think might be happening? Do you think that there might be an underspend to deliberately spend ahead of an election?
There's been nothing but a deliberate decision from the very beginning of COVID for Doug Ford to underspend. He has done this at every step. This is not the first FAO report that's come out that has told us in crystal clear terms that Doug Ford has abandoned the people of Ontario. You look at the report from this morning, and you look at the hundreds of millions of dollars, the billions that have been underspent in healthcare, for example, during a pandemic, during a public health crisis. It is appalling. Ontario families should be disgusted by what they see today in this news that's coming out. As you pointed out, Colin, over the next number of weeks, I have no doubt there's going to be a flurry of so-called feel-good announcements that Doug Ford is going to make. He's going to want to pretend to the people of Ontario as he twists himself into a bit of a pretzel that he's actually learned, that he's actually prepared to move the province forward. But we know, the people of this province know that when Doug Ford had a chance to make it very clear that he's on the side of the people of Scarborough and the people of Ontario, he chose instead to abandon all of us, especially at a moment when the chips were down and the stakes were high. That's why. That's the only thing I can think of when a premier in this province, a Conservative premier, is prepared to underspend and shortchange to the tune of billions of dollars, children and social services, healthcare, what's happening on our front lines in education and so much else. It is appalling, it is disgusting, and it is absolutely the wrong way to lead a province. It's something that an Ontario Liberal government that I aspire to lead would never let happen.
Okay, and so what does that mean when it comes to a budget balance, as an example? I mean, your government, the Liberal government in 2018, was very close to balancing the budget before deciding to spend a lot of money just ahead of the next election, which is exactly what you're accusing this current government of doing now. What is the Liberals' commitment to balancing the budget? When will a Liberal government balance the budget?
So let me just, because this is such an important point, let me just draw a very, very clear line of contrast between what we might have seen taken place in the past and what we are seeing in real time playing out here in the province of Ontario under the Conservative government of Doug Ford. We have, all of us in this province, have been suffering through, trying our best to endure a public health crisis like we haven't seen in generations. And in the midst of that public health crisis, this public health crisis, we learn again today from the independent financial accountability officer that Doug Ford has chosen to underspend in healthcare. Let's let that sink in for a quick second. How telling is it as I'm standing here in Scarborough alongside our 6 candidates committing to a significant once-in-a-generation investment in redeveloping, building and expanding hospital capacity right here in Scarborough. The kind of planning, the kind of funding, the kind of investment that we so desperately need, that we learn on this same day that when he had his chance to do the right thing, Doug Ford has actually abandoned the people of Ontario in healthcare. It's something that I couldn't have imagined I would ever see in a province like ours. So in the coming weeks, we will be presenting a fully costed and comprehensive platform. Everyone's going to get a chance to kick the tires on it, to see literally how we're going to fund what we are going to prioritize. But the people of this province need to understand one thing. There is an ironclad commitment that I am making and Ontario Liberals are making to build a public, properly funded, properly supported, exceptional and resilient healthcare system, and we won't rest until we get that done.
Okay, and it looks like there's no further questions on the line. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
It's a long-known fact